Imagine standing in your driveway on a crisp December evening, watching your little sister scream as two self-proclaimed officers slam her against the hood of their car, snapping cheap handcuffs around her wrists. The crime? Hanging Christmas lights a little too early for the liking of a group of wannabe dictators who called themselves the neighborhood HOA. The flashing red and blue lights they strapped to their SUV were fake. Their uniforms were stitched together with patches from Amazon, and their authority was as real as Monopoly money. But the way they shoved my sister, the way her face twisted in fear, the way my mother stood frozen on the porch with her hands trembling, that was real. That was the moment I knew something inside me had snapped. And if you've ever wanted to see bullies get burned, literally stay with me. Because this is the story of how we turned 17 Harleys to ash and left an entire gang of fake cops choking on their arrogance. If you've ever been wronged by people who thought they were untouchable, smash that like button, subscribe, and get ready. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a story, it's a reckoning. It all started when my sister Emily decided to string up some lights across our porch before Thanksgiving. She was 16, bubbly, the kind of girl who lived for holidays. For her, it wasn't about the lights themselves. It was about the tradition, the warmth, the sense of magic that came with transforming a plain house into something that glowed. She had been saving up babysitting money for months just to buy a new set of twinkling lights, the kind that slowly faded in and out like stars breathing, and she was so proud of herself when she hung them up. But not 30 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up with sirens that screamed too loud and strobes that burned too bright. 4 men piled out, heavy boots stomping the pavement, their black uniforms shining under the streetlight. They weren't cops. They were members of what the HOA in our neighborhood called the Compliance Committee. They had no real authority, no training, and absolutely no right to do what they did next. But they thrived on intimidation, on flexing power where none existed. "Take those lights down," one of them barked, his voice flat and commanding. He had a shaved head, a gut that strained against his fake vest, and a smug grin that told me he was used to people folding. Emily froze, holding the extra strand of lights in her hands. I'm almost done," she stammered. "I just wanted—" The man stepped forward, ripped the lights from her grip, and threw them to the ground. "You're in violation of HOA Ordinance Number 12. No holiday displays before December 1st. You want a fine? Or do you want cuffs?" I swear I thought he was bluffing. But then his buddy, taller, leaner, with a goatee that looked like it was glued on crooked, pulled out a pair of cuffs from his belt. Real metal ones. Emily's eyes widened, her chest rose and fell in shallow bursts, and she whispered, "Please, I didn't know." And before any of us could react, they had her bent over the hood of their SUV, hands yanked behind her back. My mom screamed from the porch, clutching her robe around her, but the bald one raised a finger at her like a teacher silencing a student. "Quiet, ma'am, or you'll be cited for interference." That was the word they used, cited, like they were real officers. Like they had real power. Something inside me turned molten. My fists clenched, my teeth ground together, and the world narrowed down to the sound of Emily's muffled sobs against cold metal. I wanted to fight them. God knows I wanted to lunge forward and rip those cuffs from her wrists. But there were 4 of them, and just me. I was 22, fresh out of a construction job that left me sore and broke most days, and while I could throw a punch, I wasn't stupid. They would have flattened me. So I stood there, memorizing every detail. The plates on their SUV, the cheap embroidery on their vests, the way they strutted like soldiers but spoke like middle managers, and most importantly, the patches. A flaming skull stitched across their chests with the letters HGA, Homeowner Guardians Association. They thought they were clever, branding themselves like a motorcycle club while hiding behind HOA rules. But their arrogance would be their undoing. Eventually, they shoved Emily back onto the lawn, left her crying with red marks on her wrists, and told us the HOA would review our case. Then they piled back into their SUV, revved the engine, and drove off, their fake lights casting red and blue shadows across our house. That night, Emily locked herself in her room and refused to come out. My mom sat at the kitchen table staring at her hands. And me? I sat outside on the porch, staring into the dark, feeling something coil tight in my chest. I couldn't let it go. Days passed, And the so-called guardians patrolled the neighborhood like it was their personal turf. They harassed people about lawn height, about garbage cans left out, about cars parked too long in driveways. They weren't protecting the community. They were terrorizing it. And the more I asked around, the more I learned their little empire ran deeper. They weren't just HOA bullies. They were bikers. Every one of them owned a Harley. Shiny chrome monsters they polished every Sunday morning, parked in neat rows outside the community clubhouse. 17 in total. I counted them myself. They treated those bikes like gods, waxing, revving, showing them off at every chance. Those Harleys weren't just possessions. They were identities. They were trophies. They were leverage. And that's when the plan formed. If you've ever had a moment where someone pushed you so far that your fear flipped into cold, calculated determination, you know what I felt. My hands didn't shake anymore. My stomach didn't knot. Instead, my brain sharpened like a blade. Every night I thought about those bikes. I pictured flames licking across chrome. I imagined the guardians watching their pride and joy crumble into ash. And every time I pictured it, I felt closer to peace. But revenge isn't just about desire. It's about execution. And execution takes patience. I started small. I watched. I learned. I memorized their routines. When they parked, when they left, when they drank themselves stupid at the clubhouse. I noted the cameras, the blind spots, the locks on the garage where a few of the Harleys were stored. I knew I couldn't just smash one bike and run. That wouldn't be enough. I needed total destruction. Every Harley gone in one night. Meanwhile, Emily barely spoke. She wore long sleeves to hide the bruises, and her laughter, the thing that used to fill the house, was gone. Every time I heard silence from her room, it fueled me further. Then came the turning point. One evening, I caught two guardians outside harassing our neighbor, Mrs. Patel, a sweet elderly woman who struggled to mow her lawn. They circled her like vultures, mocking her accent, threatening her with fines she couldn't afford. She stood there clutching her gardening gloves, her lips trembling. That was it. That was the night I knew waiting any longer was cruelty. It was time. Now here's the thing about fire. It's alive. It doesn't just burn. It devours. It breathes. And once you've seen what it can do, you never forget. I planned it for a Friday night, when the Guardians always held their strategy meetings at the clubhouse. In reality, it was just beer, cigars, and bragging about their power trips. They'd stay locked in there until well past midnight, their bikes lined up like gleaming soldiers waiting outside. I wore dark clothes, gloves, a hoodie pulled low, and I carried with me 3 cans of gasoline I'd siphoned from my truck, and a box of matches I kept in my pocket like a loaded gun. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. I was calm, ice-cold calm. One by one, I doused the Harleys, gasoline soaking the leather seats, dripping onto chrome pipes, pooling beneath tires. The smell was sharp, dizzying, intoxicating. 17 bikes in a perfect row, each one a monument to their ego. And I coated them like a priest anointing sinners before judgment. Then I stepped back, struck a match, and whispered, "This is for Emily." The flame danced for half a second before dropping into the gasoline. And in an instant, the world roared alive. Fire erupted, leaping across bikes, swallowing chrome, turning polished paint into bubbling blisters. The heat blasted my face, the roar drowned out the crickets, and black smoke clawed into the night sky. It was beautiful, terrifying, righteous. Inside the clubhouse, I heard shouting. Then the door burst open, and the Guardians stumbled out, eyes wide, faces bathed in orange light. They screamed, they cursed, they ran forward like men trying to save their own children. But it was useless. The fire had already claimed them, 17 Harleys, reduced to burning skeletons, and the look on their faces, that mixture of rage, disbelief, and pure helplessness, was worth every second of planning. The bald one fell to his knees, clutching his head, screaming like an animal. Another tried grabbing a garden hose, but the water sputtered uselessly against the inferno. They were powerless, just like Emily had been when they shoved her against that SUV. The irony tasted sweet. I slipped away into the night, the fire's glow fading behind me, the sound of their despair echoing in my ears. The next morning, the neighborhood buzzed with whispers. Fire trucks had come, sirens had wailed, but nothing could save the bikes. 17 Harleys, gone. The Guardians tried to spin it, tried to intimidate people into silence, but their power was broken. Without their bikes, without their image, they were just men in cheap uniforms and Amazon patches. Their fearsome reputation evaporated like smoke. Emily came out of her room that morning. For the first time in weeks, she smiled. A small smile, but real. She asked if we could hang the lights again. And this time we did, together. No one stopped us. No one dared. And me? I sat on the porch that night watching those twinkling lights glow against the darkness, and I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. Sometimes justice doesn't come from courts or cops. Sometimes justice comes from fire, from ashes, from the ruins of arrogance. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, drop a comment with the most satisfying revenge you've ever seen, and make sure you subscribe for more stories like this, because bullies always think they're untouchable until someone proves them wrong.